Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for joining our Silicon Heartland online series. As you can see, we've been all over the Midwest in the past couple weeks. We've been to Cleveland, Columbus, Tulsa, Morgantown, Cincinnati, Indiana today, Cincinnati next week, Cleveland after that. And it's been a very exciting time with the launch of my new book coming up as well, Silicon Heartland. So let me just say a few words to introduce our theme today, and also to introduce Christopher Day. He's the CEO of Elevate Ventures, and he's based in Indianapolis. Well, welcome to the show. His nickname is Toph, so I'm going to call him Toph.
That's right. Thank you, Rebecca. Great to be here.
Good. So we got an hour for the show, and please get your questions ready for Toph because he's a real expert. He's been an entrepreneur and he's a VC investor, and he's now leading Elevate Ventures, which is the most active VC firm in the Great Lakes region. Okay, so that's a good intro. Now, why Indiana and why Indianapolis? So please study this chart. Indianapolis has had a 23% increase in its talent, tech talent in particular, over the past 5 years. And the population is booming in Indianapolis, 8.2% growth, according to the Census Bureau. And since the pandemic, Indiana has gained, is the second top gainer in tech talent, tech workforce, 8.4% gain. And you can see here how Indianapolis stacks up. It's doing pretty well. It's one of the leading markets in the Heartland. Okay, so a little bit about a little context here. Rust Belt. Okay, Rust Belt, 7 basically inland states. Most of them that I traveled to for research for my new book. Okay, now here's the issue that we're going to talk a bit about today. Only 10% of VC deals and 6% of VC money goes to 7 core inland states. But the sands are shifting, and that's what we're going to talk about today. 75% of VC goes to New York, California, Boston. But on the other hand, the Heartland is seeing a 4 times growth over the past decade. So here we go, Sand Hill Road on the move, and that's me showing Sand Hill Road on the move outside Fairfield County. All right, what is Elevate Ventures? And I'm going to ask Toph to walk us through this as well as I show these slides. So I understand you just joined Elevate Ventures last summer.
Yes, so I joined Elevate Ventures in July of 2022, and so been here in the saddle for about 8 months, and really excited to be here. The future of innovation in Indiana is quite astounding, and I look forward to talking more about that as we go through today.
Okay, well, you certainly have a very good background to tackle this task. Co-founded 8 businesses in 7 different sectors, and look at the results: 4 times cash on cash return via exits for investors. Exits means either a sale, merger or acquisition, or an IPO. So that's pretty good. Now he's an Indiana native. He grew up on a farm. He has a bachelor's in technology from Purdue, and he also aced the MIT Entrepreneurial Master's Program. So not bad. What about this Indiana? Indiana as a state, how does it stack up? I mean, I think this is kind of your mission, right? To make Indiana an innovation capital of the world. Well, how does it stack up?
Well, here's what we believe in Indiana. So, number one, the first idea I'm going to put out there is not my idea. It's a couple of economists that wrote a white paper, and there's multiple economists that talk about this concept called the productivity boom.
Sure.
So the productivity boom phenomenon is well underway over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And basically the productivity boom is about the disruption of data and technology with all industries cross sector. Yeah. And it's believed that the epicenter of that is going to occur in the middle quarter of the United States. And it's believed it's going to occur in the middle quarter of the United States, mainly because of proximities of industries with one another and cost structure. So if all of that's true, then there is no doubt in our minds that Indiana is poised to be the innovation capital of the world over the next 50 years. And the reason we think that is there are 7 critical ingredients required to become the innovation capital of the world. And those 7 ingredients include infrastructure, talent, mission critical industry, technology, lifestyle, cost of living, and regulatory environment, where we have more number 1, top 5, top 10 collective rankings than I can find across those 7 categories than any other state. And you've got a few of them listed right here.
Yes, yes. Best place to start a business, Indiana. Worst place to start a business, New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That ranking just came out. Forbes just ranked Indiana as the best place to start a business in 2023.
Yeah, no, I saw that. And second best city to start a business. As we know, Indiana has a wealth of universities, Purdue Universities, top engineering school, Indiana University, and medical, and has a large number of big companies, like you were just talking about, this proximity of industries. So Salesforce is there, Angie, like Angie's List is there.
Yes.
What are some of the other big companies that are in Indiana that are making this difference?
Yeah. So Genesis, Home Advisor with Angie, Wipro, Emphasis. We have eight Fortune 500 companies. So folks like Lilly, Cummins,
Sure.
Berry Global, those types of companies are all call home Indiana.
Okay, sure. So, another factor that's driving this whole story for Indiana is the reshoring of high-tech manufacturing. And I think you just had a case study of a company that reshored from, what was it, from China or India, or where did they reshore from? Guardian Bikes?
Which one is that you're referring to?
Guardian Bikes?
Oh, yes, Guardian Bikes. So Guardian was, I believe, in Austin, Texas.
Okay.
And they were manufacturing their bicycles overseas, and they brought them in during the pandemic. They had supply chain issues. They were able to successfully bring that back to the U.S. to manufacture everything in the U.S. And then they recently chose Indiana to relocate their business. And it's if nobody's heard of Guardian Bikes yet, got to check it out. The funny thing is, I went to buy one of those bikes for my son during the pandemic, and they were out of bikes because I didn't know that they were not able to get materials. But a real success story. It's every week now we're getting companies that relocate to Indiana because of the great lifestyle and the business environment.
Well, what's unique about Guardian Bikes?
They make a really well, number one, it's a quality bike. But number 2, bright colors. They're fun bikes. Kids love them. My son knew all about them. He really wanted one, and unfortunately, they didn't have any in stock during the pandemic. But I think it's quality, and then the kids love it because they pop. Fun colors. You can mix and match.
Yeah.
Great product.
Are they electric bikes?
No, they're
real things. So you got to
real thing. You got to put that human power into it.
Okay, well, good. So that's a good success story. Okay, and Elevate Ventures, I was learning all about it. Most AskAVC firm in the Great Lakes region, and $150 million invested in all these innovative startups and scale-ups in Indiana. And you backed a lot of Indiana-based startups, 500 of them, and assisted 4,000 companies. So the interesting thing about Elevate Ventures is you're not only a venture firm investing, but you're also kind of this venture development arm as well, where you're partnering with them, you're doing pitch competitions. Can you talk a little bit more about how Elevate Ventures is kind of different from the standard or the Silicon Valley model of venture capital?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Be happy to. So Elevate Ventures, we have 8 EIRs located throughout the state of Indiana. So we have people on the ground throughout the state that are mining and combing those cities and towns across the state every single day. We work hard to help build entrepreneurial ecosystems in those other markets. So these would be cities like South Bend, Elkhart, Fort Wayne, Warsaw, Columbus, Bloomington, Evansville. And these cities have great industries already, and we're just there to help get the flywheel spinning even faster. Speaking of which, by the way, you mentioned Purdue and IU earlier. A lot of people forget that Notre Dame is located here in Indiana. Rose-Hulman is located here in Indiana, in Terre Haute.
Yeah, Indiana is really rich in universities.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm going to be visiting Purdue on my road trip for the book tour. So I'm
Oh,
looking forward to
that's
that.
excellent.
Yes, yes. And look, I also understand you have something going on in this summer. Maybe you want to tell us about it.
Yes. So in the spirit of the vision, for Indiana to be the innovation capital of the world, one of the biggest things that we need to do as a state is tell our story, right? So people think of Hoosiers, basketball, Indy 500,
Right,
Peyton Manning when they think of Indiana.
right,
There's so much more. And in Indiana, entrepreneurs, CEOs typically just crush it. They grow their companies, they grow them efficiently, they have great exits, they make great cash on cash return for investors, and they typically don't talk a lot. They don't
right,
toot their own horns. And
right.
so what we're really focused on at Elevate, along with this vision of becoming the innovation capital of the world, we think of things in three buckets: community, capital, and acceleration. So we've talked a little bit about capital. So to your point, what's happening this summer is in that community bucket. And so we went out and hired the same event producer as South by Southwest that does the content tracks and the pitch competition for South by Southwest.
Sure.
And we are launching what will be the world's largest cross-sector innovation event. That's going to be August 29th through the 31st this year. Will be the inaugural year. It's going to be called Rally, or it is called Rally. We will be soft launching tickets here very soon and then publicly announcing it. I guess maybe I just kind of did publicly announce it. But we'll be on a TV show here in a couple of weeks called Inside Indiana Business, announcing that to the state, and then also taking that message nationally and globally. We're going to have 5 innovation studio tracks in the first year. So one will be software, we'll do hard tech, we'll do food and ag, we'll do healthcare and sports tech will be the 5 innovation studio tracks we start with. We're planning to do a $5 million pitch competition. So one winner for each of those 5 tracks.
Right.
We're going to have a 6th track that will be open for other sectors that we just can't get to in year 1. That'll be called entrepreneurship. And then, of course, we'll have investor one-on-ones. We're going to have 3 keynote speakers of big names. We'll have 4 featured speakers and 200 content sessions. So we're really excited about that.
Okay. Is Pence going to speak?
I can't divulge the speakers yet. I got to keep something a secret.
Okay. Well, this is great because South by Southwest had a huge impact on Austin.
Yes.
And Austin is now one of these leading startup hubs nationwide. And I think that whole festival had a good part to play in that. I'm going to be speaking. Yeah, I'm going to be speaking there on March 11th. And
that's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm doing a VC chat with Jim Breyer.
Well, maybe we can be maybe we can meet down there. I'll be a judge for the media, content, and entertainment sector. One of the judges for the pitch competition.
Okay, good, good. I'm going to be involved with Midwest House as well.
Excellent.
Yeah, definitely see you there in person. Okay, yes. So yeah, I also want to highlight a few other things on this slide. $215 million in assets under management, and you have a new fund inside. Maybe I'm not supposed to say that. I'm allowed to say it, but you're not allowed to say it. So I just said it. A new fund inside. So stay tuned, everybody. Okay, here's a plug for Indiana by numbers. Total venture investment and deal count. And you can see the trend lines, I hope. So it has been a climb. And you can get these stats directly from Toph if you want them. He's got all of them handy, and I do too. So now I'm going to stop the share so you can see us a little bit better. And Toph, I mean, you've got a lot of things going on. How are you managing to handle all this?
Well, we have an incredible team. So we spent the last 8 months really refining the process at Elevate. And it's an amazing team. We have 25 people, and we brought in 2 new folks to help with the venture capital process, right? So whether it's sourcing, vetting, diligence, funding, post-investment value, aligning the team to every step of that journey in the process that we have. We're also going through a major operational excellence upgrade in terms of data flow and leveraging our data to make even better decisions. from a strategy standpoint. So it's a great team. We have 6 pitches a week. So it's high velocity. And I think, for example, in January, our EIRs had conversations at one stage or another with right at 1,000 companies. 8 of our EIRs had 1,000 meetings just in January alone.
Well, definitely you're keeping track of a lot of data there.
Yes.
Yeah. So look, a lot of this Rust Belt story, we've heard a lot about Silicon Beach, Silicon Prairie, Silicon Alley, all of these nicknames, right? Silicon Strip in Pittsburgh. So what makes Indiana different from all these other, lookalikes of Silicon Valley? And can Indiana really, make a difference, really rise up and be, have this staying power?
Yes, absolutely. We can, and we are, and we will. So this is a kind of a passion item for me, the word silicon. No offense to silicon word.
Yeah.
But so I believe that you mentioned Austin earlier. Every market has their own, every state, every city has its own culture, right?
That's true.
And Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley because what was it? Robert Shockley, right? He goes out to the almond farms.
Right.
And he invented the transistor, and then he came with this idea with this little chip and some copper wires he was plugging together.
Yeah.
And so I think he couldn't get funding in Boston. He goes out to California, gets some money, from the state and a few investors, and plops down the almond fields. And 2 companies later, Intel's born, right?
Yeah.
In Austin, Texas. So that culture, that personality fits, right? Silicon Valley. That totally makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Austin. I think Austin, one of the big reasons Austin, Texas is because in 1979, Austin Ventures was formed, right? And that became $1 billion fund, and talent will congregate around talent and capital. And so I think along with South by, Austin Ventures had a big part in Austin becoming what it is today. And then you layer on top of that, just the business climate, right? Tax structure, the cost of doing business, the ability to get talent, when those things all come together.
Yeah.
And so I've always shied away from this word silicon because, that's not our roots, right? In Indiana. What is in our roots is innovation in Indiana. And so we think about the automobile industry, right? The television industry, Clabber Girl. I bet you everybody listening to this right now has Clabber Girl in their pantry, right? That's from Indiana. That's baking powder, by the way. And so
I don't have it because I don't bake that much, but it's okay.
Okay, well, if anybody bakes, they've got a little bit of a, it's like you have to have baking soda, baking powder.
Okay.
And so the things that were born, invented, and innovated upon in Indiana are insane. And we're in the process of actually spooling up all those stories to tell the world. And so, yes, we are going to make this happen. Our current Secretary of Commerce has been amazing. Just last year, $22 billion in deals, right? Skywater just announced $1.8 billion chip manufacturing plant up by Purdue University.
Oh, really? Okay.
President Daniels and now President Chang at Purdue are doing amazing things. And we're working on turning from Purdue University down to the Circle in Indianapolis into a hard tech corridor, right? And so it's anchored on both ends. One end is Purdue and the recently announced $1.8 billion Skywater manufacturing facility. And so literally they're spooling up a major at Purdue University. So you can major in chip production and you can take classes. If you walk out the door to the left, you walk out to the door to the right, you can go intern at Skywater.
Okay.
That's just one example. You come down the road about 30 miles and there's an area called Lebanon where there's economic development. I think it's roughly, it's 500 acres was put together. But Lilly announced a $2 billion investment and it's called LEAP. So that's the midpoint of the hard tech corridor. You come on down to Indianapolis and Purdue and IU, which traditionally in Indianapolis was called IUPUI. They recently announced a split so they can both focus on what they're really good at, right? So IU is wonderful at many things, but they're the #1 medical school. And so they can really lean into their medical school, informatics, right? Their school of business, et cetera. Purdue with, engineering, the sciences, et cetera. And so that's just one example. So the goal of that is for this hard tech corridor, to become known globally as a
So
place
you're
you
calling
go.
it a hard tech corridor, not high tech, hard tech.
Hard tech corridor, correct.
So that means, just explain that to everyone.
So hard tech, IoT, Industry 4.0, right? All these kind of terms are thrown around, but it's back to that productivity boom. It's the collision of data and technology, the disruption of all industries, some of which we don't even know today, right? Maybe there's a different way to make reading glasses, in the near future.
Yeah.
But
3D
when it comes,
3D printing.
that's right, 3D printing. When it comes to making a hard good that is now a smart good, right, and operates much more efficiently than whatever exists today, that is going to be a real focus here in Indiana, and I think we'll be the best. We already produce the best talent in the world. That by statistics, maybe you could argue number two. But when you look at the number of engineers, for example, that we produce, I think by quantity, it's number two in the country. People just don't realize that.
And Purdue is generating a lot of that.
That's right.
Yeah. So, but you must be really competitive with Columbus and Pittsburgh, though. They're also coming on strong. How are you managing to compete with them?
We love those markets, right? And we think Columbus, Pittsburgh, Louisville, all of those cities are great Midwestern cities. We're focused on what we're good at here in Indiana. We collaborate with others in other markets, right? We co-invest. A lot of investors in those markets co-invest with us here in Indiana. So, I don't know if I think about it as competition, maybe call it co-opetition.
Okay.
But we do plan to be the innovation capital of the world.
Okay. So when are we going to see a Steve Jobs type character from Indiana?
Well, they may already exist. They just don't talk a lot publicly.
They're under the radar.
Yeah, they fly under the radar, but we're going to change that as we start telling stories here over time. We're launching a podcast as well with a partner to help tell those stories. So sure. I think I should have put together, I think on our website, on Elevate's website, we have a Why Indiana, and you'd be amazed. The first African-American millionaire was here in Indiana, Madam Walker.
Oh, yes. Yes. The shampoo, yeah.
Yep. That's right.
Sure.
So we have many different categories: actors, actresses, entrepreneurs. The list goes on. We have many categories listed on our Why Indiana page on our website.
Right.
So people can see, oh wow, I didn't realize all that was happening in Indiana. It's just a matter of telling stories.
Okay. So what's your number one success story from Indiana in the tech startup scene?
I would say the number one success story, it's hard to say now because some of these CEOs might be listening to this or will hear it when you publish it. So I don't want to offend anybody. I'll just give a couple of examples.
Sure.
And so I'm not saying what the most successful is if they happen to listen to this, but a couple that come to mind, several that come to mind. Number one would be a company called Exact Target, email marketing.
Sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Scott Dorsey, I think you talked to him previously.
I did.
Scott Dorsey and Chris Baggett co-founded that company, and they ended up being acquired by Salesforce.
Right.
And Salesforce has a major presence right here downtown on the Circle in Indianapolis. They have, and Salesforce could be argued as the world's best SaaS company of all time, right? Historically, right, over the last 25 years. So that's a success story. Interactive Intelligence. The CEO of Interactive Intelligence was Don Brown. Genesis came in and acquired Interactive Intelligence. We had a company called Aprimo that was acquired by Teradata. The CEO of that was Bill Godfrey, great entrepreneur. He's now has his own venture capital firm. Another one would be Angie Hicks and Bill Osterly, right? With Angie's List that was acquired by Home Advisor, and then now people probably see the commercials where Angie. And they rebranded to ANGI, where Angie's on national commercials, right? When people are looking for help with projects in their homes. So those are a handful of examples of national and global successes that happened right here in Indiana.
Right. And I'm thinking of the Exact Target example that you gave with Scott Dorsey, and he founded High Alpha Venture Partners, and that they're making a big impact in Indianapolis with software startups, investing a lot. So that's great. Serial entrepreneurship, it's all about escalating things, creating a snowball effect, and that's what has worked in other markets.
Another thing I'd like to mention with High Alpha is what I also love about their model is they're also attracting. I just got chills talking about this, Rebecca. But they have a venture studio. They're starting companies, nonstop. But they're also bringing in, platinum or tier one VCs from the coast, right? So people like Emergence or Bessemer, et cetera, which is really, really exciting.
Sure. Yeah. Having those coastal firms come in and look around and actually co-invest is a really good thing, I think. And it helps to boost the confidence level of the people there. And great. Yeah, we can do it. Mentality. Okay. Well, let's take a little pause here and see what questions we have so far. Okay, so Hal Kelvin, who's here in Silicon Valley, he wants to know of those 130 exits, how many were IPOs?
I don't have that number, Hal, handy, but I'm more happy to go get that number and report back to him directly.
Okay, good. Yeah. Hal,
I want to drill in on that though for a moment, because that's a great question.
Yes.
So Indiana historically has taken all the risk and given away all the risk-adjusted returns. So when our winners of winners pop out, and now they're ready for a Series B, right, and beyond, and they're ready for a 20 million, a 50 million, $100 million check. We don't have a growth equity fund here, which is one of the things that we plan to solve. That you hinted at earlier, and not that we want to displace outside growth equity, but we want to participate with it. And so there are some really wonderful growth equity funds that invest in Indiana companies. In fact, I'm going out to see one in LA here in a couple of weeks because they want to lean in and look at our kind of top 12 portfolio companies. But we've had historically what I call an early exit syndrome, where a company
selling too early, right?
Selling too early, right? And they didn't want to go to California or New York, Boston, wherever, and do the growth equity. And so they sell for 50, 100, $250 million. It's a great exit for the founder. Or when we have our $1 billion exits, 90% of that wealth leaves the state and gets recycled in other cities. We would like some more of that to get recycled here locally. And so we need to have our own growth equity fund to participate with our friends on the coast and other cities.
Right. Yeah. No, actually, I'm thinking about Lessonly, which is an Indianapolis-based company, and they sold, but they sold pretty early, actually. And some people say that they sold too early, but
I don't want to opine whether they did or not, right? Max Yoder is an incredible person. Friends with all these people we're talking about, right? And Max is an incredible CEO, did an incredible job with Lessonly and the ultimate exit of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's in my book. I interviewed him, and I think a lot of his track record. So that's great. Okay, Hal has another probing question for you. What early company in television was an Indiana company? Philo T. Farnsworth was from the Midwest.
RCA.
Right? Who invented television? What?
Yeah, so RCA and Thompson Electronics.
Okay.
Yep, there's a whole backstory there that we actually plan to have some of the folks involved in that evolution on the podcast that we're ramping up. RCA, and it became Thompson Electronics, and then they end up selling. That's a whole other story. But yeah, that's the backstory there.
Okay. So what percentage of the economy in Indiana is still agricultural based? I'm just curious.
So it is not, are you talking about industries within Indiana?
Yes, within Indiana, yes.
I think I don't have that right in front of me, but I think it's top 10. But for example, pharmaceutical is like I think we're number 2 in Indiana. So pharmaceuticals is a major industry here.
Sure.
I literally own my others.
Yeah, I'm thinking about all those cornfields. I remember driving through from Ohio into Indianapolis. I passed through an awful lot of cornfields. I'm thinking, are these all going to go away and become, tech clusters?
Well, no, they're not all going to go away. I think we will always have we have an incredible ag economy. And I think ag is one of the most exciting industries in the future, right? The AgriNovus, we have a group fully dedicated to this called AgriNovus. Mitch Frazier is the CEO of AgriNovus, and really leaning in and being intentional about innovation, in the ag sector. Just speaking of industries, I also wanted to mention Warsaw, Indiana is the orthopedics capital of the world. That's a $53 billion global industry, and Warsaw, Indiana accounts for half of that industry. People probably, my friend Hal, that I can't wait to meet because these are great questions. But Hal probably didn't know that, right? And most people probably don't realize that. And so that's an industry that we really need to be leaning in here, from a governmental standpoint and from a private sector standpoint.
Yeah. So in my book, I do talk a lot about the Rust Belt being depleted, right? When the industries moved out, they went to China, they went to Mexico. Yeah. And so we saw a lot of poverty, despair take over in these in the heartland. And so now this tech come back as a chance of a recovery, don't you think? Or how much of a chance do you think it has?
So I think there's no doubt in my mind that Indiana will, across the board, whether it's Indiana or various cities throughout Indiana, will be mentioned in the top 5 metrics of kind of everything that matters. And maybe that's an exaggeration, but many things that matter, that move the economy forward. I would mention that some of the cities where maybe industries have left, there's also a company called Megawatt, for example, that does crypto mining. And they're revitalizing some old manufacturing facilities. And I think they're in 2 or 3 cities already now in Indiana, where they're mining crypto, but they're redeveloping these manufacturing facilities that were vacant, right? And they're modernizing them, putting paint on them and those kinds of fun things, and getting the lawns, gussied up.
Sure.
And so there's things like that are happening as well in those smaller towns and cities that just helps to boost the economy.
Sure. Yeah, we're seeing high tech coming into manufacturing. So that's helping to move the economies forward with AI and robotics and 3D printing. So, the heartland was the industrial heartland, the backbone of the U.S. economy for many years, until about 50 years ago when, the tech economy took over. And we saw a lot of action in Silicon Valley and in Boston, for instance. So now it seems that the industrial heartland has a chance of coming back because of tech being baked into it.
That's 100% right, which is back to that whole concept of the productivity boom. We've now arrived at the moment where data and technology can be infused into these mission critical industries that places like Indiana are leaders in, right? And now we have all that. So we have this talent, right, that's being groomed right down the street, right, at universities like Notre Dame, Purdue, Ball State, Rose-Hulman, IU, right? The list goes on. So we have this incredible talent. We have these deep roots in innovation and manufacturing. And so now you take the things around AI and generative AI or AI, Web3, blockchain, et cetera.
Right.
And you start infusing those with these industries. And if other states don't have those deeply embedded industries or areas of the country, you can't just spin that up overnight, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. What about Gary, Indiana? I drove through Gary, Indiana, as part of my research a couple times, and it was kind of sad.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity. So the state is looking at these areas very specifically, right? And what are the attributes and the strengths of those types of cities that can be leveraged to transform them and catapult them into the future? But for example, Elevate, we have an investment in a company called Paradise Spreads. And the founder CEO is in Gary, Indiana.
Okay,
and
what do they do?
So she's made, it's a food tech play.
Okay.
But she's making a healthier version of food snacks for kids, right? So healthy, gluten-free food is the food line that she's bringing to market. It tastes great. I've had friends taste test it. But there's all these golden gems like that we're really leaning into. There's great ideas in these underserved markets that we're intentionally going into and mining those markets to try to find those entrepreneurs who have been trying to get something off the ground, and how can we help them with not only capital, but make a couple of introductions, whether that's customers or whether that's more efficient manufacturing for their product, and just really being intentional with those baseline things that are required to kind of get it to the next level.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about the lifestyle changes in places like this in Indianapolis. Going to Indianapolis and spending some time there, I was really kind of surprised at how diversified it is.
Yes.
There's a large minority population there, and it's a large gay population there. And downtown, it's like really bustling. I felt like I was in Greenwich Village or something. It really was. I thought, wow, this is the new Midwest, I think. So talk a little bit about the lifestyle changes that you're
Yes.
seeing, kind of new restaurants. It's no longer just fast food, right? You have
Yes.
ethnic food, and
So
of course the housing factor is another factor. But let's hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you just gave me chills, Rebecca, because that's exactly right. The diversity is amazing. And I think some of that starts from the universities. Like, so Purdue, for example,
Yeah,
is an extremely diverse university.
yeah,
And so as we get more and more talent, as we retain more and more talent, I think that has helped. And we've also really intentionally leaned in to try and get underserved markets involved in opportunities. And so when we think about lifestyle overall, it comes in many forms. So for example, people listening to this podcast probably don't realize that Indiana has 45 miles of beach. 45 miles of beach on Lake Michigan. It's amazing. It is gorgeous. It looks like the ocean. It is absolutely amazing. Indiana is also bordered by over 50% water, right? So on the north and the south, over 50% of our border is actually water. And we are now really starting to think about how do we activate, right, those gems, right, those assets. There's also 58 miles of river going right through Indianapolis, through 2 or 3 counties. And people are starting to think about how do we activate that into a national park-like atmosphere. That's in the process of happening. There are cities like Fort Wayne, for example, that just built what's called electric works, hundreds of thousands of feet of a GM plant that's being repurposed, where the major corporations like DIY, et cetera, are relocating there. They have incredible food courts with local chefs, et cetera, and really leaning into the local economy, because it takes the small businesses all the way to the large corporations. It's one big flywheel, right? It all fits together. South Bend, the same thing. They're setting up, co-working space, incubators, accelerators, the Notre Dame Idea Center. If you look at Indianapolis, there's people probably don't realize, like the NFL Combine is here almost every single year. Big Ten football championships, the USA Swimming Olympic Trials is going to be, I think the first time ever will be held in a football stadium, is going to be here in 24. The NBA All-Star Game was going to be here next year. The NCAA Final Four, we have 2 more men's Final Fours coming up in the next few years, and also the women's in 2028. So there's, we have the Indy 500, which is the greatest spectacle on earth. We have pro football, we have pro basketball, we have a soccer team that we're getting ready to get a 20,000 seat soccer stadium for Indy 11. The owner of that team is an incredible entrepreneur. So that new soccer stadium is going to be built. There's going to be a whole village around it. It's going to be absolutely amazing. If we move down to Bloomington, right, they built a co-working center called The Mill, for example. And they're getting ready to expand that, I think, by 3 or 4x the size of that. And the universities are now just rethinking everything. How do we make the lifestyle really, how do we improve the lifestyle by multiples of X for our students, for our citizens, et cetera?
Right.
Columbus, Indiana, the same thing, where Cummins was headquartered, is headquartered. They have incubator space, et cetera. Evansville, the same way. So all of these states throughout Indiana are extremely forward thinking for all people, for all citizens, to be welcome to live, work, and play.
Yeah. So that's why you're seeing these numbers of the increases of the tech talent pool. The millennials are moving in. So the tipping point, I think, for the Heartland was the COVID, the pandemic, when everybody said, okay, I can remote work, I can move out, out of pricey Silicon Valley, pricey New York, pricey Boston, and go work in Indianapolis maybe. and do the same kind of work for a lot less cost of living. So yeah, so how do the housing, I mean, what is the housing rate like there? What are the housing rates like there? What can you rent an apartment for,
Yeah.
buy a house for?
Yeah, it's amazing. So from a housing standpoint, so there's several states they're experiencing kind of mass migration, right?
Yeah.
And I think there are multiple reasons for that, but one is definitely COVID definitely
Yes.
changed people's mindsets and like, gosh,
Yeah.
I can work anywhere, right?
Sure.
And so here in Indiana, you can buy a house for 25% of what you would, in New York, in California, et cetera. A $250,000 home here would be at least $1 million, if not more, in those markets.
Yeah.
So they could come here and buy $1 million home. It's 10,000 square feet and live like a queen or a king, right?
Yeah. You can't touch anything here in my neighborhood in Silicon Valley area for less than 1 million.
Yeah. $1 million and $1 million home here. So I know people there that live out there, and those $1 million homes are, 1,500 square feet that
Right.
probably still need a lot of work, right? Here
Yeah.
you can get a brand new home, that's 5,000 square feet easily, for
Right.
that.
Yeah. So the only thing you can't really change is the weather.
The weather here is amazing. We have
It's
seasons.
been good this winter is what I hear.
Yes, absolutely. It's beautiful weather. And if anybody was here for the Super Bowl, they got to see how wonderful the weather is here. We have wonderful, beautiful seasons. The summers are nice and warm and cozy. The falls are gorgeous you throw a sweatshirt on, you have gorgeous leaves changing. You get a couple snowfalls, you have a white Christmas. Everybody loves each other. And then you get to see all the flowers blooming, in the spring. It's amazing.
Yeah, you definitely change of season. I'm from the Heartland, so I get it. I'm from Ohio, southeastern Ohio, so I definitely get it. And we've had an awful lot of rain this season in Silicon Valley. All the reservoirs are full again.
That's good.
So that's good. I mean, we got over the drought this way. Okay, so what else? What else can we talk about? Let's see. Let me share my screen again to give us some promptos here. Okay, so we talked a little bit about our events that we're having. So the next one is going to be Refinery Ventures out of Cincinnati. And then we have Jumpstart from Cleveland. And then we have Rise of the Rest, March 7th. And also Revolution, March 7th. So that's Steve Case. So I'm looking forward to that. And then, of course, just reviewing again these slides. Okay. So look, a lot of you have not really been to one of my shows, and you maybe not know that much about what we're doing, but we have in-person events and we have this online weekly show. We've also been doing preview events for my new book, San Francisco, New York, Las Vegas, Los Angeles. And, the reason we did some of these coastal places is that we're trying to bring more coastal money into the heartland, because that's one of the issues, is that you got this innovation in the heartland, but you need more capital to push it forward. And then I'm going to be speaking at South by Southwest March 11th, and I'm doing the road tour to the Heartland Hub starting in March as well. So it's all very exciting. And for those who really liked our show and want to see more of them, look, if you join the Silicon Dragon Circle, you can see the web link there on my website, silicondragonventures.com. Despite the ventures.com part of it, I'm not an investor. I tend to be a trend spotter instead. I spotted China tech early on before anyone believed that China tech was anything. And so that's where the Silicon Dragon came from. And now I'm tracking what's happening in the heartland, I think, and it's still kind of under the radar. So we're trying to bring that story out by these AskAVC shows with people like Toph on the show. So that's a little bit of my trend spotting here. You can see 3 prior books. Silicon Dragon was the first one, 2008, then Startup Asia, 2011, then Tech Titans of China, 2019, which is actually not that long ago. And this new one, March 7th, launching March 7th, and you can already pre-order it on Amazon. And for the research for the book, I went a lot of places. You can see here on this map. This map is really only the core of the places that I visited. I went to Tulsa and Birmingham, Alabama, and Texas as well, and many other places. Boston. I ended up in Boston here at my publisher's place. And I was driving around in my Honda Element, which I still have, and I hope never to get rid of it, but someday I may have to trade it in for an electric vehicle. Okay. Look, Publishers Weekly gave my a new book a great review, and they called it a travelogue because I was traveling so much during COVID doing the research for this book, that I actually thought that was kind of humorous that they called it a travelogue, because I never saw it like that. I saw it as like really an in-depth look at what was happening in the heartland from venture capital and startups. And so, yeah. Okay, well, let's go back to Toph here. And Toph, do you have any other remarks you would like to make? Because we covered a lot of things here, but I'm sure there's other things on your mind that you'd like to bring up.
Yes. So I think, one of the messages that we really want to get out is for all the entrepreneurs that are sitting out there and the investors that are sitting out there, a couple of large things. Number one is Indiana is like truly the home of 1 degree separation. And so it's very efficient to navigate the relationships you need to get to, the people that you need to get to, whether that's help with go-to-market, whether it's help with finding customers, whether it's help with mentorship, whether it's help with angel funding or seed funding. It's very efficient to navigate, even to the CEOs who might feel untouchable, right? People really want to help each other lift up, is one thing I would mention. The second thing I would mention is, and it's kind of interesting with this recent downturn in the economy. So COVID and the downturn in the economy is round sizes and valuations were getting way ahead of many companies. This is not just an Indiana thing. I think this is for many companies, across the country. Round sizes were getting really large, putting a lot of pressure on companies that believe they had product market fit, but they didn't. They were still really in founder-led sales versus process-led sales or absolute product market fit.
Right.
And the expectations to grow at 100% a year is like, okay, like you're expecting 200-300%. And unicorns are great, right? But if you look at the absolute numbers, unicorns are far and few between. And you can't, as an investor, you that's great when you find those unicorns, but you can't base your entire strategy on it. And so I think that the one thing that we're really good at here in Indiana is building high growth companies, but building them efficiently. And from an investor standpoint, especially with a dispersed workforce, you can invest in a growth company here that probably is upwards of, depending on what numbers you look at, might be 60 to even as high as 70-75% more efficient with capital, just from a pure cost structure standpoint. But people still get paid well here. It's not that people are underpaid. They still get paid very well. Right. And one thing we've seen is a lot of the large tech companies, the Facebooks of the world, the Googles, it's shocking how many people that live here work for global tech companies. They're all over the place. And so what I think has happened over the last kind of 10 or 15 years is, if you're going to move or relocate to a city or a state, you want to know that if you move there and that job doesn't work out, that there's option 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, right? For you to land. And that's now happened in Indiana. And on top of that, it's dispersed workforce. And so I think that that's important to know from both the entrepreneurs out there, right, who are thinking about starting a business, or they really want to lean in and grow their business. And from an investor standpoint, where they want efficient deployment of capital. They want great growth, but they want efficient deployment of capital and not having millions or tens of millions of dollars, wasted on unnecessary rent or, unnecessary housing costs, et cetera.
Right. So to that point, in some of the latest national venture capital statistics, I dug out that the median fund size for the coastal firms is 60 million, but for the inland states, it's 29 million. So it's half the size. And so that
Yes.
could mean that you just have this extra mileage with the money, right?
Yes, slash this growth equity piece. And if anybody's listening and they want to talk about growth equity, feel free to reach out to me directly. But because of how the markets have developed, there's never been a real, well, I shouldn't say that. Drive Capital came, or some folks that came back from the Bay Area, Drive Capital, and established a fund. But real growth equity funds are few and far between, and that's the next step I think we're going to see.
But that's good. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, the Drive Capital was invested. They have funds of amounting to $1.2 billion.
Yes.
And they do have that growth capital fund, which they need now because they started investing a decade ago.
That's
and
right.
those startups can't live forever on just seed money. They got to keep growing and getting more capital. That's the whole idea, right? Until they go to get acquired or merged or go public or something. And then everybody celebrates. That's the idea of it. So what about this diversity angle? And, you know, one of the things that the Heartland, I think people may not realize is that there is this huge minority population in many of the major metropolitans, such as Detroit and Columbus and Cleveland and Indianapolis, I think too. But and I have seen a lot more funding going toward diverse entrepreneurs. So can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So, Elevate. So our track record, the national averages for women and minorities receiving venture capital are around 2.1, 2.3%.
Yeah, it's very small. Yeah,
very small. We can always do better, but right now we're tracking at about 10.8 and 15.8%. And then in our pitch competitions,
statewide.
Correct, statewide.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So all in, roughly a little under 30% is minority and women-led companies, as opposed to, you know, if you add them both together, 4% roughly on a national average, right? So we're really excited about that. Now we can do even better, and we're going to do even better, but we're really excited about the progress so far. The other thing I want to mention is the pitch competitions that we have. We hold pitch competitions around the state. And there's regional winners and then there's state winners. But those numbers, the 39% and 43% of our winners happen to be women-led and minority-led businesses.
Oh, really? So
really
how do people find out about these pitch competitions? How do they apply? I mean, we have a lot of people on here who are going to see this recording.
Yes, absolutely. So come to Elevate's website, elevateventures.com. And there's a place where you can find our Nexus pitch competitions to apply. Now, today, just so everybody's fully aware, as of today, we can only invest in companies that have a presence of some sort in Indiana. There's some criteria, high-level criteria. It doesn't mean the entire company has to be in Indiana, but there are some Indiana-centric criteria. But absolutely, anybody listening, and now, by the way, I also should mention, the Kauffman Foundation has the slide out there that's a tale of two entrepreneurs. So it has SME and IDE. So SME means small and medium-sized enterprises. So these would be your local businesses, right? A hair salon or a coffee shop or something of that nature. We don't invest in those types of companies. The other side is the IDEs, the innovation-driven enterprises, and that's where Elevate invests. And so those are businesses that have at minimum a $500 million total addressable market. Preferably it's $1 billion or more, but it has to be at least 500 million or more. And those are innovation-driven enterprises that have national and global markets.
Okay, and so these Indiana-based companies that you invest in, how much of their business is in Indiana?
Oh gosh, it's all over the board. You know, I mean,
it's all over. These are companies with national impact that are based in Indiana. That are startups.
Global impact.
Right? Global too. I see.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. These companies that we're investing in have global impact. We have, you know, we have companies like Authentics. We have Xylo. We have the next batch of companies are all urging out now.
And how much do you invest on average in the
deal? Our average investment is around 500,000, but our range in any given round is up to 2 million in a given round, and up to 4 million in a given company is our current. That's currently where we are.
All right. Do you have state matching?
So we do require a match. So if we invest, $1 million, then the company would also have to raise another $1 million. So for a total of 2 million.
I see. Okay. All right, that's interesting. That's good. I mean, I think that's a different model than Silicon Valley has.
Well, and we're tracking 152 million to 2.035 billion. So that matching is massive.
Oh, wait, run that by me again. You're tracking 150 million to 2.3 billion.
2.035 billion. So
Okay.
we've deployed $152 million, and the co-investment in that 152 is 2.035 billion.
I see.
Over the
And the
last 2 years.
co-investment is the state and other investors, right?
Yeah, it could be any batch of investors.
I see. I see. That's good. All right. Well, we welcome.
Yeah, just Rebecca, on that note, we've co-invested with over 2,400 VCs throughout the country.
Oh, okay. Good, good. And how did they hear about what you're doing? You said you're coming out to Silicon Valley to tell at least one of the firms out here what you're up to.
Yes, so I spent a lot of time with previous businesses out there. And this next trip is out to LA.
Oh, well, yeah.
I'll be down at South by, hopefully meeting with some VCs as well to let them know what's going on. And then a lot of those VCs are interacting with the people like High Alpha, et cetera. So
Right.
it's with Purdue, with IU, right?
Right.
With Rose Hallman, et cetera.
Sure.
It's a very tight ecosystem.
Yeah, yeah. I think you brought up the aspect of community. I think that's really important driver of the Rust Belt. I'm sorry, I won't call it the Rust Belt. I'll call it the former Rust Belt. I'll call it a tech belt. Okay, well, thank you very much, Toph. And really, hey, everyone go out and support my new book. Here it is, the author's copy, Silicon Heartland. You can see the wheat there, but at the text at the top. All right, well, thank you again. I really appreciate it. Hal Kelman is chiming in and says thanks as well.
Thank you, Hal.
So we really thank you. And everyone, we're going to be showing this on our YouTube channel and also our newsletter. So stay tuned for that. And thanks again. Take
Thank you,
care.
Rebecca.
All right. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.